So it's been a while, hasn't it? I've been trying to create a review for over a year now. Then one day, I succumbed to a dare on Discord that I would immediately regret. Little did I know the journey that this would take me on. The damage to my psyche. The mosaic blur edits. Oh god, the mosaic blur edits. So before I start, I just want to say that despite its simplicity, this is the most I've spent on a project, and while I suspect it's not going to be great, the game reflects my own ability in more ways than one. Because it's trash.
Fresh Women
is an adult visual novel developed by Brazilian studio Opie Games in 2020. As of 2023, the first episode of Season 2 has been released. However, development has migrated to another game, Forbidden Fantasy, with no timeline on when they'll return to the project. So for the foreseeable future, this is going to be the state of the game into probably all of 2024. Which I know you're just bummed about, right? I mean, this game just oozes quality. Just a forewarning, I'm going to be spoiling the entire plot from this point forward, since there's not really any mechanics at all, being a visual novel, with one exception, but it's so brief it honestly doesn't count. Okay? We good? You didn't click off yet? Did you watch Grimbeard's review of Synergist yet? The game centers around Simon in the vaguely American town of Minerva Bay, where he attends college to meet Susan, the family friend, and last lead he has to his father's whereabouts. His father, who disappeared while Simon was very young for mysterious reasons, with only vague memories of giving his father a hug as the last memory he remembers. Since Simon's father was the breadwinner, they had to move out and share a house with 3 of his cousins. While he grew up, he scraped together any information he could find until he turned 18 and decided to venture forth, business card in hand until... Waking up in a hospital, Simon jokes about how he didn't obtain superpowers, only scars. Which I wish was just a dumb one-off thing, but they actually kind of integrated into the plot, with people being impressed by it, which yeah, scars are cool, but this doesn't look like a scar. It looks like semi-translucent lines drawn on a back. Because it is. Simon then comments about he has amnesia and has no idea where he is, being unable to recognize his own mother or his own reflection in the mirror. Filled with determination, he is told that strong emotions will eventually unlock his memories and that he has nothing to worry about. Simon ends up finding his own research as a kid to his mother's dismay, and continues the original plotline, now upgraded with his new power. Fucking everything that moves. From this point, it's time to meet the fuckies, and the game dumps you to a mall with 4 options. The bookstore, we meet 2 people. Chloe, the book nerd / hacker, and Dylan, the goofball, who is Johnny Bravo if he put on a Russian accent. The arcade, we meet our gamer girl, Julia, who likes Wish.com version of Dance Dance Revolution. The coffee store, we meet Alyssa, the barista, dancer, and nightmare bringer. In Susan's clothing store, where we meet Sue, and I'm sure you'll be shocked to hear this, Susan. Susan informs us that Sue is her niece, and that she hired Simon to do clothing deliveries around town. Simon then asks about the half photo he has of her, but she declines to give any more detail about it, after she discovers that Simon's mother has kept him in the dark. Returning home, we discover that we did not pack any towels, so he decides to ask our neighbor Emily. Jesus, there's literally nothing of this interaction I can show. Since the neighbor only has 1 towel, we decide to ask our landlord Lily for one, who agrees only if we fix the kitchen sink. Yeah, I see where this is going. This game has an ungodly amount of interactions like this, so trying to keep this story coherent is actually really difficult. After wetting the wick, we go back home and prepare for the first day of college. We meet Chloe in the library, where she finds out about Simon's missing father and offers to help investigate. After work, we meet up with Alyssa, the barista from earlier, and stare at her ass. For way too long. The following day, we're woken up by Sue, who can't get over how sus her Auntie Susan is, and wants to do some light B&E at her beach house. And look, I can turn my brain off like the next guy, but why would you do this? Why wouldn't you just ask Susan about what's bothering you rather than break into your aunt's house? You don't even need to break in the first place. She has a key. And notice how I'm being a bit vague here, because outside of wanting to help Simon, she has no reason to be suspicious at all. She makes it seem like it's some pattern, like she's been hiding something more, but it's never explained what that more could be. There's a scene that tries to justify that story beat more, but all it makes me think of is that lizard laughing meme because it means nothing. It's never brought up again, but I'm getting ahead of myself. After sneaking around the house, we look at some toys, swipe a red suitcase, and perv on her texts, and notice a notebook that says, "Keep an eye on the boy." Here's that conspiracy again, but for all we know, it could just be his mom being worried about him, which, now when I think about it, that's kind of a good play. After a conversation with Sue, where she calls you a
bundle of steaks,
she asks you to keep an eye on Susan and begrudgingly offers you a ride home. Upon arrival, we figure out Lily's pipes need cleaning again, but are interrupted by her husband coming home. Running out the door, we are stopped by an undercover cop who arrests us and drives us to the local Skid Row, which turns out to be Dylan and co. hanging out at the local strip club wanting to get wasted. We're given a pointless choice of red or blue drinks and then immediately black out waking up at home. All it does is slightly change a dream sequence that has no bearing on the actual story. Upon waking up, we have a conversation with Chloe where she asks for more details about Simon's father and also agrees to help investigate Susan. Later on, we follow up with Alyssa about attending a dancing class where this happens. And then immediately after, which prompts Alyssa to ask you to replace him at a dance recital despite this being your first session. Sure. Okay. After you confirm that Alyssa is in fact fuckable, you decide to confirm that gamer girl Julia is also in fact fuckable, decide to meet up, and proceed to play what I can only describe as strip N64, but any potential feelings she may have in your loins are, pretty tempered by this. I'm not really attracted to someone who looks like they can rip my face off with ease. I don't know. Call me picky. Afterwards, Simons discovers his still works and heads to work, where he helps move boxes with Sue and Susan, accidentally locks them in the back room, and then leaves. Immediately after the power goes out, cell service goes out because a repeater in the back room dies. Look, you know exactly what's gonna happen here. Day 69 to pass the time so hard he remembers a phone call he made that ended up killing Sam's uncle. If you're looking for some explanation on how this actually fits into the story, I can't help you. Maybe it makes sense when season 2 is finished, or maybe it's a red herring. I have no idea. Simon attempts to ask Sue if her Uncle Charlie died at night to confirm if his new memories are genuine, but gets interrupted by Susan taking them home. Simon attempts to ask Sue if her Uncle Charlie died at night to confirm if his new memories are genuine, but gets interrupted by Susan taking them home. After dropping Sue off, he screams
Charlie
at her, which fools her into thinking he understands enough what is going on. Susan proceeds to explain that Daddy Dickles ran an architecture firm in the mall and did fashion consultant work for him, which is how he met Charlie and discovered he was a close friend with Lily's husband, and that we should ask her for more details. Dylan the following day tricks Simon into going back to the strip club and giving both options the salami special, and has some of the best faces in the entire game. After his masterful performance, he is crowned Miss South America, and Dylan begs to be his apprentice. I really can't put into words how many goofy scenes there are like this. Like, take this shot of immediately after, where we meet up with Chloe and Alyssa's coffee shop, and I think there's a difference of quotient formula plastered on 2 8-foot chalkboards. I don't know, I'm not a math guy, so please let me know what other formulas you see here in the comments. We meet up with Chloe and Dylan at the mall again and agree to rent a candy van to spy on Susan later tonight. Apparently our guy doesn't have any clean black shirts and decides to wear the next best thing, a magenta shirt. During the stakeout, Dylan pretends to be a delivery man while we somehow have access to Susan's security cameras, which is never explained. But don't worry, we get attacked by a bear, and I shit you not, Dylan returns with a flashlight and shines it on your shirt. It blinds the bear, and it runs away. This game. It tries to have a competent story, and then does shit like this, and gives the biggest tonal whiplash I've ever had in my life. After revealing Chloe's voyeuristic side, Simon confirms that Lily knows more than she initially let on, and vows to confront her. I guess it's time for pipe cleaning number 3. Before that, Simon is shocked that the girl who wanted to be around him constantly, acted cute, and liked biting her lip sensually around him is in fact down to fuck. But leaves us with this masterpiece. Future generations will marvel at this and wonder how such high art was achieved. Truly, this is the best timeline. Dylan catches Simon waiting for the bus and has a nice smelly bro conversation with him and offers him a ride back to his place so he can clean up before he confronts Lily.
Yes, how may I help you?
After confusing you with the help, Simon then proceeds to pass out from extended use of his first head and wakes up on the couch with a concerned Lily and a conspicuous flash drive falling out of his pocket. After Lily snatches up the drive, Simon confronts Sam about his version of what happened to his daddy. Sam then attempts diplomacy for 2 seconds, but then says, "Haha, you may be able to fix my grill in my sink, but you can never fuck my wife. You're a nobody." At this point, I'm honestly surprised Simon doesn't have a shit-eating grin and just kinda agrees with everything because he's Giga Chad Chaddington, the fucker of all that moves. He doesn't need to understand words. That's what his harem is for. Speaking of harem, Lily defends Simon and says he's more man than he'll ever be, which Sam gives him the finger and boots him out of not only his house, but his apartment too, since Sam owns it. Dude had free rent and couldn't keep his mouth shut, and we didn't even learn any new information. After that humiliating defeat, Simon realizes he's about to be homeless in 3 days and calls his mom to comfort him and decides to hang out with Gamer Girl at a cafe. Simon ruminates about dropping out of college since he's about to be homeless, and Julia gives a nice impassioned speech about how he's the best DDR player in the world and that he'll figure it out. Just gotta believe in the heart of the cards, I guess. After heading home, the developers realize it's been about 5 minutes since you last fucked something and put a naked neighbor in your bed where we have this classic animation. Afterwards, she gives us 2 golden keys, which allows us to access her apartment, and a mystery key she refuses to elaborate on. The mystery key being too exhausting for Simon to figure out, we pass out on the bed and are treated to a dream sequence. Guess I'm not sleeping tonight. After waking up, Simon gets a call from Susan, his boss/aunt, and wants him to come over where he admits that he's been spying on her, despite Sue's best attempt to foil his plan. What's crazy to me is the whole spying scene didn't really make much sense. We never see how Chloe is able to spy into Susan's home, and I just figured she hacked into their security cameras, but no, Simon admits it's a fucking drone. You know, the thing that does this? How in the fuck did Susan not realize what was happening? I mean, we all know why, but all they had to say is some throwaway line about good soundproofing. Yeah, it's a condo full of windows, but at least you could acknowledge it, but no, of course not. So to reward Simon with his honesty, she starts sucking his dick. reveals her side of the story about Sam taking advantage of Simon's dad before disappearing, which isn't exactly new information, just kind of restating what it's already known, but I digress. Sue then drives Simon home, and on the way, they sunset and chill. Before passing out, he has a conversation with Alyssa, offering her dance studio to be used as a crash pad if he practices for a dance recital at an upcoming ball. That's in 3 days. The next day, Dylan shows up in a World War II Jeep and a Fez and talks about how his World War II Jeep is a true Russian's car, which is honestly great. The more Dylan shows up, the more I like him. Like, I thought he was going to get cucked or Simon was going to joke behind his back about only getting sloppy seconds, but while that last part technically comes up once, it could have been so much worse, which I'm thankful for. The only thing eventful at the first day of college is Chloe and Julia's realization that they're after the same boy and form a bit of a rivalry. At the dance studio, we meet up with Alyssa, which a lot of and the one and only multiple choice event that happens in the entire game. Where do you want to spend the night at? Too bad it doesn't really matter. Everyone makes a sad face, has 2 lines of throwaway dialogue, unless you choose Dylan, who has a funny, haha, I have a porn collection, I hope you know I had beans for dinner. Good night. Afterwards, you head back to your dorm for the last time. After packing and crashing at whoever you chose the night before, you head to class to be confronted by, quote, female professor, end quote, who never reveals her name, only to chastise you for being friends with Dylan and repeatedly calls him a loser while she gets uncomfortably close. Afterwards, we meet up with Angela, the angel dancer we bumped uglies with earlier, to literally, quote, taste test a new, quote, candidate, which we end up doing in the classroom of all places for a surprisingly long time and eventually get caught by the janitor. After escaping what looks like a Harry Potter prefect Naruto running, we stroll our way in the Gam Kappa Cap hallway. Okay, fine. Where we convince ourselves that we are in fact a normal boy, yes we are, and we get a call from Lily asking if we can come over. She confronts Simon about the drone perving, but is weirdly understanding of the situation and asks if he wants to know more about his father. Thankfully, Lily realizes she only knows as much as Susan and stops another retread of information we already know. Because we all know why she invited Simon over. All her pipes are clogged, and we need more Drano. For what it's worth, a surprising amount of scenes are skippable, however you get the game's bad ending if you don't fuck everything, which is definitely a choice. Decision, even? I still can't believe they worked that line in the game. When do you become a stale woman? When you hit menopause? Leave a comment below if you identify as a stale woman. After Lily can flush her toilet, we decide to crash Emily's apartment again, only to find a pressed suit on the bed with a note wishing Simon luck at the ball. It's like she's expecting something. Afterwards, Simon heads to a party where we proceed to have competitive DDR complete with a WWE belt as the prize. Simon and Julia reign victorious as she pushes Simon into the pool as a form of horny jail as his massive schlong refuses to stay in his tighty whities. The gang then all get together to play some beer pong, where Dylan gets a scripted salty sequence where he's either mad you humiliated him at beer pong, or mad that you clearly let him win. This is also the time where sloppy seconds is brought up, which was definitely the low point of Dylan's relationship. Simon, of course, doesn't let it faze him because Julia hasn't forgotten about the meat snack and wants some of it for dinner. Now this next scene I thought was just my horrible editing, but this is really how this plays out. You get maybe 20 frames, and then it cuts to black with Simon laying outside by the pool hungover. We have a one-off conversation with Dude Bro, who comments how well-rounded we are for a freshman. Take the bus, use Emily's shower one last time, put on our best Aladdin cosplay outfit, and head to the ball. After the performance, Susan wants to congratulate the troupe and swear she sees someone familiar. However, once Simon thinks he is safe, he gets recognized by both Emily and Sam, where Emily offers to defuse the situation by offering both a drink. Where this happens. This is the part that made me genuinely want to make a video about this. I was thinking, whoa, are they actually going to create a narrative masterpiece in this harem game? However, while this is the end of Season 1, 6 months ago the first episode of Season 2 dropped, and you'll notice some significant changes. But rather than tell you, let me just show you.
Let's go. Help me with Sam. We don't have time for this right now. We need to get Sam inside before he wakes up.
There's a flashback scene prior to this that I'm skipping because it's, again, information we already know, but let's see how fast you notice the difference. So not only are NPCs voiced, but Dad looks completely different. I actually think his voice acting is done fairly competently here, but he has some really over-exaggerated moments. Overall, a really good addition. It should have had this since the beginning. So after you convince Dad to not keep you chained up, he requests help torturing Fred, where Simon is understandably conflicted about helping, although he rolls with it because he once answered why his dad wanted to get cigarettes for 15 years. Dad explains that Fred set him up as a fall guy, and fled the country to avoid sentencing while the feds took all of his assets, making his mom destitute. After learning about Simon's attempted Thor cosplay, he tried to sneak back into the country, only for his smuggler friend to set him up. Honestly, this isn't a bad story, but the last part is where it falls apart. The lightning strike was when Simon was 18, he's 19 now, attending college. Are you telling me this guy avoided the FBI for 15 years, gets arrested at the border, and then only gets a 1-year prison sentence? Am I missing something? I don't even think the Baltic countries are that lax about avoiding capture for that long. No way he's not catching at least 10 years. After this scene, you get a choice if you want to forgive your father or not. Now, since this is the last episode so far, I have no idea if this has any repercussions later on, but that's something you depraved individuals will have to find out in 2026 or something. Anything you see in this video, highlighted in green, is the option I chose, by the way. After forgiving him, Simon's conscience starts kicking in, where he decides to check on Sam, only for him to headbutt you and get knocked out while Fred tries his chance at freedom. Unfortunately, because you weren't using your brain anyway, you wake up just fine and greeted by a nurse with, oh, I see where this is going. Dad conveniently steps out for 3 hours in a cabin with no TV, cell service, or internet. Gee, I wonder what they're gonna do for fun now. So after the warm protein shake, Simon decides to eat some beans and feed Sam some beans while he's at it. Sam pleads with Simon that he needs to be released and that he doesn't know the full story, and blames Fred for Sue's father's death. Honestly, this plotline in general is a bit weird, because Simon mentioned to Susan already that he has vague memories of being on the phone with him prior to him dying, and that he might be to blame for his death, yet at this point it isn't brought up at all. If Sue isn't really distraught by her father's death, why should we care? Hearing his father come back home, he scurries upstairs to his pot of beanies and makes small talk about how he got to know the nurse. So we get another illusion of choice option, where afterwards we decide to call Chloe on a landline, where they decide to meet up. Only problem is that Simon doesn't have the guts to ask Fred Flintstone where they are, so they use the pizza place as a meetup point, which is 12 hours away from Arcadia Falls by car. Speaking of car, he somehow has the courage to ask for a vehicle, but passes on the moving van because he doesn't have a license and opts for a pedal bike instead. Now, I don't know about you, but this is the point where I take my chances learning on the fly with the van, wait for Chloe, and then dip back to Arcadia Falls because she presumably has enough money to get us back home. Instead, our protagonist paperboys his way to a pizza shop with a surprisingly big menu, and after meeting Chloe, discovers that he has his dad's wallet in his pocket, complete with a fake ID with the name of Carlos Gonzalez. Afterwards, they retreat to Chloe's hotel room, where she can do a bit more digging and some... Believe it or not, this is one of the few bedrooms where nothing happens, which legit shocked me. Almost as much as our plucky lumberjack leaving his boots on while he sleeps. Who leaves their boots on while they sleep? Did Thor give him PTSD instead of lightning powers? Actually, come to think of it, the scene with the bear pimpettes, he had his shoes on too. That makes sense considering he's in a business, but in a hotel room? Take them off. You're not gonna get trench foot in a hotel room, dude. Trust me. The next morning, after discovering that the real Carlos died in a fire, we see Lily on the local TV station pleading with the public for any known information on her missing husband, despite it only being 24 hours since he went missing. See, every time I think this game has good writing, like how it now finally makes sense that Simon's father got out of prison in 1 year because he escaped prison and faked his death, it's completely negated by a regional broadcast of a man missing after only 24 hours. Now, I'm not sure that all countries are like this. Like, there might be some weird rule in Eastern Europe or the Latin American countries, but here in Freedomlandia, you can only file a missing persons report after 72 hours. And despite them being wealthy and white, there's no way a local broadcast would get picked up hundreds of miles away so soon after a disappearance. Sound off in the comments if I'm completely off base here, but I'm not a police investigator. This is kind of basic knowledge, right? After the broadcast, Simon conscious kicks in again and gives Lily a call telling her not to worry and that her husband is alive, which only makes her worry more. Simon attempts to bike home only to discover a police cruiser outside the house and gets spotted by said deputy. Simon clumsily responds with, "I'm sorry, officer, but I'm not into bestiality. I don't fuck pigs." Which then Simon gets tased where he meets up with his father in jail. Actually, in that scenario, he'd probably get a giant dose of lead poisoning. Would be a great ending, honestly. Instead, Chloe rolls a 20 on a saving throw and convinces him they're just lovers looking for a quiet spot to make some fuck, and discovers that it's a manhunt ongoing, not a murder investigation. Somewhat relieved, the officer gives them a ride back to the hotel, where Chloe calls up Dylan to come pick them up instead. While they wait, he calls Lily again to tell her the little new information he knows to assuage her fears that end up being moderately successful. During their drive home, Dylan and Simon bury the hatchet and Chloe jokes. Is it bad that I was hoping they'd passionately kiss and wreck the car and that was the ending? If only we could be so lucky. Simon catches up Dylan on what happened and gets dropped off at Chloe's apartment, where once again, you can guess the outcome of events. Afterwards, Simon gets a phone call where he's confused who was calling him, despite the caller ID saying Fred. I'm not sure how many times you can blame the second head on this kind of shit, buddy. Daddy informs him that he's outside Chloe's apartment and asks him to come down, which is pretty creepy and impressive, honestly. It implies that Fred has a tracker on Simon's phone, or knows how to hack/social engineer his way to tracking his GPS coordinates, which does fit his character of being a capable felon, but still. Why is the subtext of this game so much more disturbing than the actual content? Before he opens the door, if you chose all the green options with Lily, you send a text informing her of Fred's location, where she immediately calls the police. Dad desperately pleads with Dickles to come with him, and he finally refuses, stating the obvious about the kidnapping situation and that he should turn himself in. During the argument, Dad hears the sirens and attempts to leave the scene, only for Simon to take the keys. After Dad pleads once again, you can either keep the keys or hand them back. Either way, his guilt catches up with him, and Fred waits to be arrested with his son at his side. Afterwards, regardless if you feel bad about getting your dad arrested or not, the gang eats some pizza and calls it a night. While leaving, you get a call from Susan asking you to come over. She apologizes again about the whole situation, and then this scene happens.
No. Please.
I thought I might find you here. We need to talk.
And that is so far the end of Fresh Women. The lingering nightmare of my psyche finally put to rest. This game clearly has its following, and is featured pretty high on Steam if you have your filters open to degenerate content. Me, personally, I'm glad it's over. I would not recommend it. There's glimpses of a good story, but obviously it's just the surroundings to all of the high quality animation that I can't show you. There's a noticeable uptick in quality as the series progresses, which is cool to see. I wish I could feature more of the music, but most of it is copyrighted, and I had to chop this up so much it would be an incoherent mess anyway. Shout out to Gunmetal for inspiring this idea, and thanks to Grimbeard for allowing me to rant constantly in his Discord. I couldn't do it without you, and while I could talk more about the future projects of Opie Games, I think I'll leave it there for now. You guys know the things to do. I'll see you lads later. Mech out.